Hi everyone, I am going to go ahead and take you through the final project for our final module. I chose to use the tool Canva. I thought it was really interesting and I had never used it before and wanted to try to learn how to use it, and I think it ended up pretty great. So I'm going to take you through and go over the different points to show you about my poster. So on the first page here, I just put some points about my philosophy of online teaching. The first 2 points, A and B, really relate to my personal philosophy of teaching in a face-to-face classroom. For point A, I believe all students are capable of learning and should be given the chance to have the highest education possible. And point B, I also believe that all students should feel their classroom environment is a safe place for them to be themselves around myself and their peers, and I think this relates to online teaching. Teaching is teaching, like we talked about at the beginning of this course. Good teaching is good teaching, and so being an online teacher, I want to make sure that my students have that ability to learn and that they are receiving the highest education possible. And I also want them to feel safe in the classroom because that's where they're coming to learn. That's where they're coming to have interaction with other students, and safety is a big part of that. Also in letter C, I put down learner-centeredness, I said the main focus would center around the learner, which is also known as the learner-centeredness, which is talked about in the Rice textbook on page 27. The learners, or in this case really be the students as well, have individualized goals and are seen as their own person aside from all of the other students in the class. And this would take place through various projects or different discussion groups and all the things like that. But my main focus, and I believe that it should be all about the students and their learning and their thinking and being able to show what they know and what they still need help with. My role in an online teaching would be known as the guide on the side. I really like this description in the Rice textbook, which you can find on page 147, how they talk about as the teacher is there to support students' learning in any way that the students need. And it is centered around their students' personal needs, which goes back to the learner-centeredness. I should not be the focal point, and what I want to happen should not be the focal point, but the learning is of the student and what they need. So my role would definitely be the guide on the side. Again, I really like that quote that was used in the Rice textbook, and that's how I would see myself. I included this little picture from Kid President. I love showing Kid President in my face-to-face classroom, and I feel like I can relate to this quote. If at first you don't succeed, you're normal. And I want my students to know it's okay to continue to fail at something. You're normal. You're just like everyone else, but we will get there. You don't understand what we're learning yet. Goes along with the power of yet and the Carol Dweck growth mindset and all that. For number 2 down here, the online unit that I would teach is math. I've been talking about that all throughout the course and the different modules that we've had to talk about. I could definitely see math being one of the easiest things right now to put online, and it would allow me more one-on-one time with my students, and I would be able to see where my students are and what they understand. So I would start converting all of our lessons, which we teach place value, addition and subtraction strategies, time, money, geometry, all that good stuff. And so I would be able to create lessons and put them online. So point A, I just see that putting my math unit online would be very interactive for my students. I could already see that when we had to record ourselves in the synchronous lesson. So I would be able to see what they're doing, and also I think students would learn so much from being in a group, which is known as peer teaching. They understand each other, they understand their language, and then I'm able to see, okay, who of that group really understands the material and who do I need to pull aside and work on their more personalized goals. Since I teach a face-to-face classroom right now, I would start with a flipped classroom approach in point B here, where students might watch a video that I've previously recorded, which would go along with the asynchronous tool, or I would pull them in an online class like we did in the synchronous module where we had to record ourselves, and I would teach them a lesson, and then I would be able to send them off into either a breakout room with other students, or maybe I'd have a different project that they could work on Poplet or Padlet, which I'll get to on my next page. So definitely would stick with math unit and wanting to have that be my main focus of the biggest one of the easier areas for me to be able to put solely online. The third point that we were supposed to kind of go into and talk about are how would we, be able to use synchronous, asynchronous, and collaboration tools. And I really thought this went along with the standards. I found myself referencing back to them a lot because I wanted to make sure, okay, am I like thinking of incorporating different things in my online classroom that would go along with the standards. We have standards for face-to-face teachers and the standards for online teaching. Very crucial for me. I feel like it's very crucial to stick to those because that's kind of like our teacher guideline. That's where we should hopefully want to stay around. So I felt like this specific point went along with standard B, which is where the teacher is able to use a range of technologies that effectively support student learning and engagement in an online environment. I would definitely, for point B here, I would try to have a central learning management system tool, such as Schoology or iTunes University, which are two of the different ones that my district uses. So I'd want to stick with something that my students might be more familiar with and that they might have had more interaction with. And those are two tools that I'm fairly familiar with, which would help with the integration of moving math or any other subject online. If I'm able to be comfortable with it, then I'll be able to comfortably teach it to my students, and they will hopefully be able to understand and be able to take off with it and go to town. In point C, also going back to point B, in the Rice textbook, I found on page 53, it suggests to have a central learning management system that is used as the primary delivery method of your teaching and your lessons. And I think this just goes back along with making sure that everything is in one place so that students don't have to go to one site for a certain lesson and then go to another page for a certain lesson. Having everything together helps keep it organized. Definitely helps with those students who we just talked about in our past module who struggle with attention difficulty and would be able to help minimize their stress level with that. In point C, under the third bullet point that we had to talk about, I said I would need to model the various tools and how to use them. I would also need to model how to participate in the discussions, the chats, the breakout rooms, which is also another thing that's described in chapter 6 of the Rice textbook, which really went into how you're supposed to implement showing your students how to be a part of this online community, which I felt like was one of my biggest questions before I read the chapter, and I felt like I had a lot of things answered, which was awesome. But definitely, it's interesting when you think about, you're learning these things and you don't take the time. Okay, how do I explain how to go through, how to find a discussion board, or how to use an emoji in a chat box? So definitely something that I'd want to make sure that I show my students, and so I'm not setting them up for failure, but I'm setting them up to succeed and be a part of our online community and having that social presence in our classroom. And then for letter D, I also said I would take things slow and not introduce new content and a new tool at the same time, which this was described in chapter 5 in the Rice textbook, specifically on page 126. They just suggested, introduce a new tool, but introduce it with content students already know, and definitely would be something to take in consideration. So I'm also, again, setting my students up to succeed and be and want to be a part of our online community. One of the synchronous tools that I said I would use is WYSICUE. I mean, I used this for my synchronous tool in the past module, and I thought this worked out really well. My students loved it, so I definitely used the chat in the breakout rooms. In the Harstinsky article, I apologize if I'm not saying that correctly, it highlighted on page 4 that when using a synchronous tool, students are engaged and motivated to answer, since I would need an answer to a question like right away. So definitely I saw this in my previous module that the previous lesson that I recorded using this tool, that students were on the ball right away answering when I asked a question. So definitely would be something I want to use, because like in that article, students would be motivated and want to, be the first person to answer it, which is great. A few asynchronous tools that I could see myself using in my online math course would be Poplet, whereas what's the tool that I looked at a little more, making mind maps. Padlet, it's kind of like a online chalkboard splash, putting up a question and then students can answer and respond to each other. And then discussion boards, maybe posting a question and they can respond to each other, or doing just working together. I also said Poplet and Padlet could be used in synchronous tools, but I'd probably start them as asynchronous tools in my class. Some management and assessment of tools, I would definitely want to monitor the online community, which goes with the community cohesion in the social presence model. I want to make sure that our class is a true community where they can contribute to and not be afraid to contribute to. And letter B, I said I would need to set clear guidelines so my students understand what I expect out of them, which is also talked about in the Rice textbook on page 127. Again, I want to set them up to succeed and be able to make sure that they have the correct guidelines and the appropriate tools. In letter C, I want to make sure I'm always focusing on the learners when I'm managing and assessing the different tools that they're using, and when I'm creating assessments, which goes with letter D, my next point of using various assessments. I could pull students in to help me create their assessments, which is mentioned in the Rice textbook and the Prensky article, which on digital natives. So this, as described in the Prensky article, students can be our best resource when we are trying to develop assessments for their learning, because they know what they want to show, in a sense. They know what they want to show me as a teacher. So I felt like using the students to help me, it would be a very different situation for me, not used to that, but definitely something that, again, goes back to the learner centeredness, which is one of my philosophies that I would hope to implement in online teaching. And I included the social presence model down here because I really felt like it really was able to show me different things and how they all connected to each other, and definitely something to check out if you haven't already. My ahas, students are still engaged, and technology is still relevant because it appeals to most students' interest. Since my students are digital natives, as described by Prensky, they're used to being exposed to technology. So I think it's great because they still love it, and they want to be a part of the community, and they enjoy it. And I didn't think it was too hard to learn and to implement. I just had to kind of jump all in and make sure that I was paying attention and researching different things that I could implement and provide in the discussions. And some of the same challenges in an online face-to-face class also happen in a face-to-face class, which I thought was interesting. And I went back to the Archambault article, where the 3 main challenges they talked about were time, resources, and course content, and which I definitely can see that happening. Time, course content, and student issues. I forgot the third one. And this is definitely something that I can see in a face-to-face classroom. Here are my questions. I'm running short on time, so definitely just want to learn how I can bring everything together, and so I can implement it and be successful in an online classroom. If you have any suggestions or any answers, I'd really appreciate them. Again, thanks for watching. I appreciate any feedback and all that you all have to say. Thank you.